Welcome, everybody. Crown Royal presents Food for Thought. We have a special episode this evening. We're having a conversation with a millennial. And I thought this would be a great opportunity, especially with everything that's going on in the world and how we actually think about what's going on, how we think about young people, and how in this moment, especially with a lot of things going on socially and with the upcoming election, how does a young black man actually feel as though he is in this landscape of America? How are they maneuvering, and how do you actually, a lot of things that's going on hits them personally. And I couldn't find a better person to actually interview than this young man next to me, Dallas Hill, and he's a political science major at St. John's University. So he is actually studying politics, and he is very in the weeds when it comes to some deep topics that some of us may not actually be up on. So it should be a learning experience for everyone. And you can get some type of insight on what young people talk about and how their experience growing up in America feels to them. So, first off, Dallas.
Dallas.
Very interesting, nice name.
I'm glad you think so, because I don't. The name came about from my dad, who sadly is a Dallas Cowboys fan, as are my two brothers. But to his dismay, I ended up becoming a Philadelphia Eagles fan because I went to a school where Philadelphia Eagles fans would come and visit.
Well, everybody can't be raised right.
Yeah, everyone can't be a Super Bowl champion either.
Okay, one time, not 5 times. Another thing.
In my lifetime.
I digress. We'll move on. Okay, so you have siblings. You have two brothers and
Two sisters.
Two sisters, and where do you fall in the dichotomy of 5 kids?
I am the second youngest.
So you, the second youngest. So how does it go? Girl, boy, girl.
It is my older sister Jasmine, my older sister Jordan, and then my brother DeAndre, and then me, and then my younger brother Demetrius.
So you are the middle child of the boys.
Yes.
So, okay. And you are the Eagles fan in between the two Cowboys fans.
You hate to see it, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a big family. Okay, so how did that dichotomy of growing up with a large family work for you?
I would say it definitely helped me out. I love my family deeply. I would say, especially coming to college and seeing how some of my friends' families, how their family trees are and everything. I was blessed to have both of my parents in the same household. They ended up getting divorced, but I still have both of them in my life. And I know a lot of black people, not just my friends, but just black people in general, they tend to, the family unit isn't always intact. And I'm definitely blessed, and I wouldn't be here without having that.
Good. So you came from ultimately a two-parent family household, but then you like you said, your family separated, but you still had contact with both parents and things like that. Okay, I want to know what kind of upbringing did you have, like in schooling, and was schooling like something that was very pushed or like important to you?
Yes, so my parents always they didn't push education on me, they pushed just succeeding. And for me, just school was just another part of succeeding. So graduating high school, I guess traditionally it's a big accomplishment, but because they always said, education is key, and doing certain things are just key in life, it just didn't seem like a big deal to me. It seemed like something that I was supposed to do. So going to college, it's the same thing. It just seemed like something that maybe that I'm not supposed to do, but doesn't seem like an achievement to me because it just seemed like the next step that was needed.
Like, okay. Now, what type of schooling area did you grow up in? Now, did you grow up in let me be more specific. Did you like grow up in in more of a city or suburban? Like, did you have any type? Did majority black, white, like diversity when it came to school? And wha- what situation did you
Okay,
actually
yeah.
grow up in?
So we pretty much always grew up in suburban neighborhoods. Even well, we kind of live in a rural area now, but it's kind of rural suburban.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been somewhat diverse, but
Mm-hmm.
you can always tell that you know the people of color are outnumbered. There were always more white people. So the
Mm-hmm.
town we live in now in Smyrna, it's 72% white. And coming from Smyrna, Delaware, and then going to college in New York City, it was definitely a big culture shock for me because here again 72% white, and I go to New York City, and that is the melting pot of melting pots in the country. And then not only that, St. John's is one of the most diverse schools in the country at that. So then seeing a bunch of different cultures and people that I didn't get to interact with in Delaware, it was just something completely different for me. But I definitely enjoy it.
Okay, now let's go back to your elementary and your high school years. Now, when you talk about 72% white, so my big thing question is now you have a different type of experience in life. So whereas though you like difference for me, I grew up in and went to school that was over 90% black. So I didn't go to school with white people, and we had some Hispanics sprinkled in there and things like that. And I grew up in a city. Now, how did your experience with going to school with quote unquote diverse but majority white people, how did that actually broaden your horizons, or actually did you feel as though you still identified yourself as being a black person? I'm
Oh, of
sure.
course, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I wouldn't say that so-called like, hmm, I don't know, like it definitely taught me that, you know, I always saw people as just people.
Mm-hmm.
So even though there was always white people around, and mostly white people around, I never said, "Oh, those are white people." And then if I saw one of my black friends, I said, "Oh, there goes my black friend." It was always, "That's Derek, that's Anthony." My best friend, he's white.
Right.
And but like, people say they don't see color, and literally it just wasn't really a factor. And it wasn't something that I even noticed until I started getting older, and I actually started paying attention more to, things such as those natures.
Okay. On that point, what is what? This is always what I wanted to ask of somebody of your age. How did growing up, majority of your life, because you're 20, about to be 21, so Obama became president when you were about 9 or 10 years old.
Hmm.
So majority for 8 years, a big chunk of your life, there was a black president.
Yes.
Did that? How did that affect you as a child growing up? Did you see that as young as you was? Did you know that was such a great accomplishment, that it was a big deal?
I so not at first. I remember the time around the election, not like the entire election, but just him becoming the president and all that. And I knew that it was a big deal because it seemed as though to everyone else it was. But for me, it just, I mean, I've seen black figures around my entire life. So, my parents, my grandparents, and then, athletes. Also, like, I've always seen people in high places, at least to my, personalization. And so seeing somebody black become president, at the time, I didn't know that he was the first black president, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seemed great and everyone was excited about it. So naturally, I was excited about it. But I mean, it wasn't honestly anything at the time that I thought was that big. But as I got older, I saw the significance of the character and the person
Mm-hmm.
of being, Barack Obama being the president.
So with that being said, and I'm going to kind of get a little bit deeper now. When at a certain point did you actually see that in society? Maybe not in your personal life because you had diverse friends or things like that. That being black was actually different in America?
So after my parents had got divorced, we had moved to Delaware, as I said, and it was me, my brothers, and my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to school, and when we first moved here, we had lived with one of his friends. We had shared a room in her house, and then we had finally got our own place. And then I remember everything was fine for a few months, and then eventually we had moved out, and we had got evicted. And then we had moved back in with a friend, and then eventually we got another place, and then same thing again, got evicted.
Mm-hmm.
So then it comes around freshman year of high school,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a decision to be made. It was either we're gonna stay with another friend in an apartment, or I'm gonna stay in New Jersey with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, I said I was just gonna stay in New Jersey because I didn't want that experience of just being in that small space, just And I love my brothers and my dad, but I just didn't think that was something I wanted to go through, especially in high school. But that had only lasted like a night, because then I changed my mind, called my dad the next day and said, yeah, I'm going to come home. And then eventually we became homeless, and we had stayed in a motel for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that specifically, but it was then actually like me being homeless, and then actually reading up on homelessness, and not only homelessness, but just the poverty rate in the country, and
Mm-hmm.
Economic inequality, and why certain things are as they are. You go around town, you go to the fast food restaurants, and who do you see in there? You see predominantly people of color.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a predominantly white neighborhood, and white town. So seeing things like that, I just wanted to look more into it, and then actually seeing how ludicrous and how astronomical certain occurrences are, and certain statistics and percentages are. The income inequality, the fact that blacks are less educated. So it's kind of seemed as though we have been set up to fail. So I didn't want to be in that situation, but then after reading about the history of the country and the way certain things are, I saw that I'm kind of where I've been set up to be.
Okay, but the situation that I get that, and I hear what you're saying. So, whereas though, did that actually, that situation actually gravitate you to actually being more involved in actually politics, or something to that extent? I mean, in a sense, whereas though you felt as though, I want to know, where did your love for politics or your interest after that? That's what gravitated you to say, this is what I want to do.
So that's what got me there. But definitely, I always knew my dad was politically motivated and politically active. We didn't have deep political conversations, but just things such as the importance of certain things. Definitely, he would say things such as, your appearance is always, something key and stuff. Don't go outside, with your hood on at nighttime and blasting your music too loud and all those things. And I just thought, okay, so why is that? But then as I got older, and he started saying these things more, it was because I fit a description. And I was like, so why do I fit a description? And then, seeing, Trayvon Martin get gunned down, seeing Michael Brown get gunned down, things like that. That's what also pushed me over, because I just being homeless kind of that put me in the mindset that, okay, let me see about this. But then actually wanting to get involved in politics was seeing these things.
I want to jump off on that homeless situation. Now it wasn't. I'm gonna ask you, was it a situation where as though your parent, or you said you lived with your father? What did he not work or something to that extent?
And that's actually, I'm actually glad you asked that, because that's also part of the reason why I gravitated towards politics. My dad worked very hard, worked 2 jobs. He would leave 5 o'clock in the morning, come home 10, 11 o'clock at nighttime. I wouldn't see him. He would be sometimes gone before I got up, and then I get home, I'm asleep, and then he's there. And I just didn't understand how someone could work so hard. They always say, work hard, you work hard, you get ahead in this country. But he worked harder than anyone I saw around me, and that's what we were. And it didn't make any sense.
And a lot of times it comes to the wage gap.
Hmm.
You got to work 2 times harder just to make some type of income, and at a certain point, you still not getting there.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where as though people don't actually see, whereas though when they say you live paycheck to paycheck, or you the working poor, or something to that extent. But ultimately, you got out of that situation and you got into a better situation.
Yes, luckily.
But how was getting and going to school and things like that during that time for you?
If anything, that made me more motivated to go to school, and it made me more passionate about actually needing to get this education, and actually try to overcome the struggles of where my father was in our situation. And there was actually a time I remember there was a counselor that actually came and talked to me, took me out of school, took me out of class, and just asked me about the situation and how I was, if I was actually learning anything in school, if I had actually wanted to even be there. And and this is actually something I don't really talk about it much. None of my friends knew it. I think maybe the only person in the school that knew was one of the guidance counselors, and then the basketball coach. And but if you wouldn't have known it though, seeing me on the outside. I was still cracking jokes. I was still on the basketball team. I was still doing all the other things that I usually did.
That's an inner strength in you, especially at a young age, to actually be able to deal with that. So you said earlier that going to college was just like the next step for you. It didn't seem like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But you go to a very good college.
And very expensive, yes.
And a very expensive college. How did you get there?
Definitely that work ethic that got me through that time period, and again, my parents instilling me that I need to do that. I would also say I know that. I think that.
When I say how did you get there, St. John's is very expensive.
Yeah.
Scholarship, grants, loans. How, and I know one of the biggest things for your generation is debt, from educational debt or things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we already know that you didn't come from any means,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of people that look like us don't come from means. So, grades,
yeah.
I'm sure you had to have some type of grades even to get into the but what I would like to know, and maybe share with people, like how you got to the point where as though I think it's probably cost like close to $60,000.
How I can pay to go there?
Yes. And these is important things that people need to know.
Yeah. Well, I worked for it. I would say, that's definitely one of the things. Like, I try to be very modest and humble, but I go to a very expensive college. It costs $64,000 if you're living on campus, and I lived on campus the first 2 years. And I would not be able to go there if I didn't have the grades, the SAT score, and the scholarship money to go there. So I worked my butt off in high school. I did the extracurriculars. I volunteered. I did all the things that they said you need to do to have on your resume to try to go to college. And I did it to the best of my ability, and that's what it got me. And I definitely, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to afford to go to St. John's. But I don't think I would have I wouldn't meet the requirement to even go.
Right. Right. That's a big point. That's a big point, because I know a lot of people have problems with saying, like, how do I pay for it? How am I gonna? And I always look at it as I say, it's an investment in your future. Um, these are not the times back in the day where as though you can just get a high school diploma and go out and get a job and actually have a real true living wage, because a lot of jobs like that are not out there anymore, that you can just go and get a nice, a really good paying job, and I'm saying even just you got to have some type of skill.
Yeah.
But let's dove into. I found something interesting in talking to you. You're 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a lot of places.
Yeah.
You've been name some of the places, countries, wherever state where you've been at.
I've been in the United States. I've been to Georgia. I've been to pretty much all the southern states except for Alabama. I don't recall going to Alabama.
Well, nobody wants to go to Alabama anyway.
Oh well.
There or Mississippi.
I've been to California a couple of times. I've been to Arizona. I've been to Colorado. What else have I gone in the country? I've been a lot of places actually. Then out of the country, I've been to Amsterdam, Paris, and Rome. Yeah.
Okay. Paris, Rome, so Italy. How does, and maybe you didn't pick this up, how is being black in other countries, does it differ from being black in America?
So speaking from a traveler standpoint, I would say I really only felt like out of place, I guess you can say, or like that it was a problem, like kind of being black, where like people kind of looked at me different in Italy. Because Amsterdam and Paris, they were very, most of the people were very welcoming, and if I said something, they spoke English and they said hi, and they tried to go into conversation. They asked me a lot about just America in general. But in Italy, it kind of seemed like everyone would kind of just like bat an eye at you or look at you sideways. And I don't know if that's because I was black or because they knew I was American, because I know that's a big thing in the European countries too. But that was definitely the only place where I felt as though it was kind of just like, I feel like they feel like I don't belong here.
Let's piggyback off that. I want to know, especially with all the things that's going on in America, and whereas though a lot of people that look like you, people that are around the same age as you, have been killed or been in prison, been systematically taken out. At what point in your life did you understand, or maybe you actually, racism actually hit you in the face, or being black? All right, we had a little bit of technical difficulties with the camera situation, but we're back now, and we're going to continue our discussion with Conversations with a Millennial. We left off at talking about at what point in your life, in your early life, because you're not that much time, that did you actually see or feel any type of being black in America, that it actually really hit you?
I would definitely say I haven't experienced any kind of racism or anything personally. I mean, not at least openly, kind of just microaggressions, but that's something I think everyone kind of gets sometimes. But I would definitely say what opened my eyes to seeing that racism was prevalent in the country was definitely after I actually got into social media and I actually got to see things, and I got to see the experiences that other people have and that they were saying and everything, and then just seeing videos, around the time that I actually got Instagram was around the time that the first Black Lives Matter kind of protest had erupted
in 2014.
In Ferguson after the Michael Brown shooting, and that's when I actually saw people in the street, and they they were just angry and mad, and I actually saw it because people account had posted it, but to negatively highlight it, to point out, the rioting and looting and the violence and everything. Mm-hmm. But in reading what people were saying, and that's actually how I learned about the situation, it seemed like it was just very unjust. He said the dude was running away, and then he had his hands in the air and all of that, and he still got shot. And it just seemed like it didn't make any sense to me. So then after that, I went and I saw, that I learned about Rodney King and what happened in '92. Mm-hmm. And I saw, other instances of police brutality and all that. And then, that really is what opened my eyes to it.
Okay. Now, let's get into the politics of the thing. Mm-hmm. Now, as this said, that we're at a point where as though now you become more active in seeking this information. You're in high school, or this is, so you're 15, so you're like a freshman in high school. Mm-hmm. Like, when is this when you made the turn where as though like politics and these social issues were close to you?
It wasn't. Well, I guess you can say around that time. It wasn't exactly that point, but around that time, yeah. A little after that was when I said, when I actually wanted, got interested in politics even more and actually wanted to go into politics. And, I knew probably from my sophomore year of high school that I was going to go to college for political science. I didn't know specifically where, but I just knew that was the lane I wanted to go. I'd want to go in.
In your belief, what can have a career or actually be in politics, what can that do for you or do for whoever you want to serve?
Well, you go into public service to serve the public. Mm-hmm. And I really, I just look and I say, there's not anything or besides politics really that interests me. And I just know I can't work a job or go to a job where I'm not interested or I don't feel as though I'm actually being productive. I feel as though, everyone has something to give to their community. That's how a community functions and works. Mm-hmm. In a society. Everyone gives something to better, the lives of everyone. And I think that with my passion, interest, and knowledge, it would be best suited in a position of public service. I actually, I want to make sure that nobody else has to be homeless. I want people who don't have health insurance, who don't have a job, who don't have, whatever it is that they're missing that, is a necessity, not only in life, but specifically to live in this country, that you need to have. And our government doesn't provide that now. And we need more people who actually, come from working class families, who actually come from struggles to understand the struggles that average Americans are going through.
Okay. So let's dive into the politics issue of today. Okay. You, for one, today you're here in Delaware because
primary election.
It's September 15th, mm-hmm. and you came home to vote in the primary election. Mm-hmm. So now you are of age. You weren't of age in 2016.
Yeah.
So what is your view on politics? I'm going to assume you're a registered Democrat.
I'm a registered Democrat because we live in a closed primary state, and which means closed primary meaning that you have to register as a member of either the Democratic or Republican Party in order to vote in the primary election. So if you're independent, which I originally registered as, then you wouldn't be able to vote in a primary.
And primary elections are important. Why?
Because this is actually where you really get to see the differences within the party. So specifically, especially lately, you've had more corporatists, whether it's Democrats or Republicans running against, whether it's either, if you're a Republican, someone who's far right, or maybe like a libertarian in 2012, around that time, it was the Tea Party, and now you have the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And basically, this election, specifically in Delaware, it's, you have the corporate Democrat, Chris Coons, who's running, He doesn't support a $15 minimum wage. He doesn't support universal health care. He doesn't support a lot of things that, the Green New Deal, things such as that would actually help many people around the country. And you have Jessica Rain. She's a progressive, and she's running on those platforms. And, this is where real change can actually happen, because most people just see Democrat or Republican and they vote that. But it's deeper than that. And the primary election is where you get to see the diverse status of people within each party.
Right, because Democrats are what they would call a big tent party, so they have a lot of different ideals. And one of the things I want to jump off on with that, when it is a primary, you do get exactly what you're saying. You get to see the differences in the two candidates, and in a lot of cases, primaries are very good because when you get hit from the left or the right of your flank, and that's, of course, that's political terms, it tends to make the candidate have to move a little bit and actually adopt these positions of their opponent when the actual major election happened. Yeah. Case in point with Joe Biden. But okay, let's somewhat it is the most progressive platform ever, but compared to what
exactly?
All right, so who were you supporting during this round robin of 22 people going through trying to become the next Democratic nominee?
There was a lot, and there were a couple of candidates that interested me. But despite the Bernie sticker on my computer, I was actually a big supporter of Andrew Yang. I was a member of the Yang Gang.
And Yang Gang, he was the gentleman that tried to introduce the
Universal Basic Income
(UBI).
Yeah.
Which, look it up. It's used in Alaska.
A lot, yeah.
Alaska.
Every year they get about between $1,000 and $2,000 from the oil money.
Right
there.
And it's just, and he wanted to give everybody
$1,000
a month.
Yeah, from to be used from the gains of automation and from the tech companies. Yeah.
And actually, that was something. Was it Kamala Harris was talking about adapting, or somebody was talking about down the line? They was talking about, maybe it was during the stimulus issue. They was talking about maybe personally.
A couple of people had came out, but it didn't. I felt like, because freaking Marco Rubio had came out and said that he wanted something like that, and I feel it was just something that a lot of politicians just said because they wanted to seem as though they actually cared about their constituents who were struggling during that time. But they knew nothing was going to come about them saying that. I don't think it was pure. They don't think they really meant that when they said that.
All right, I want to ask a question about in your realm and the people that your age group. I'm pretty sure, especially being in college, y'all have, and especially being in political science, y'all have a lot of debate, discussions, and things like that.
Yeah.
You don't seem like, all right, are you one of those people that are here for confirmation, affirmation, or do you actually seek people with diverse and other opinions to actually debate and get an idea where they're coming from?
It's actually funny. I'm a double major as well. I double major in public relations and rhetoric and communications. And one of the assignments we have for my argumentation class was, I actually just submitted it yesterday, and what I had touched on was that more is learned in debate and arguments when you're actually conversing with people who disagree with you, because then you can actually take something away from that conversation. But if we were to sit here and just, we're both say we're both Democrats, and then we both, agree on the same issues, we're just in an echo chamber feeding each other the same information that we already know. And, nothing can be taken away from that kind of conversation. And, we don't live in a utopia, and no society ever, is, filled with people who agree on everything. So having these discussions with people who have different experiences than you learn more about them, but you also learn more about, where they come from. And, there's other people in this country who, they don't have the same experiences. They don't have the same thoughts and beliefs as you, and everyone contributes to this to the conversation. You know, everyone has good points, just like everyone makes bad points, and no one group or person is ever right on everything.
Okay, so have you been confronted by in these discussions by Trump supporters?
Yes.
And
Yes.
what did you take away from them?
I preface this by saying I can distinguish between, let's say, a Trump supporter and an average Republican, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2016, people vote for people for different reasons.
Yes.
You know, no one group is monolithic. So to say everyone who voted for Donald Trump is racist and everything like that, I think that's idiotic, and that's just obviously not true. But I'll definitely say, speaking of Trump, people who are still Trump supporters in September of 2020, any of them that I talk to, they are the QAnon far right people. And I really don't converse with them because, I mean, they usually don't have anything valid or of interest to say. And usually if they're saying something, they're just regurgitating something that he said, and we know that he tends to lie and fabricate things and push things to the extreme. So in conversations with Trump supporters specifically, I really don't go in there attempting to even, because anything I say to them, they're not going to come away with it, and they're not actually going to think about it. So I just don't even waste my time with them. But Republicans and conservatives,
yes,
specifically,
yes,
who, you know, they're not, you know, just far out like that. Yeah, I have conversations with them all the time, and you know, if we can disagree about things such as, you know, economic policy or certain social policies, then, you know, that's a conversation worth having, because, you know, we can definitely contribute and there's things to learn. Like I learned a lot of things about, you know, the economy from people who were conservatives.
Fiscally,
Yeah,
fiscally
conservative. But, you know, there's
which
certain,
a lot of black people are fiscally conservative.
and that's not a problem. I feel like fiscally conservative isn't a problem at all. It's when, you know, it's when you start to get into social aspects where, you know, that's where there's just no debate that can be had sometimes in some instances, such as like just gay rights. Like,
yes,
at the end of the day, we're talking about the rights of a person. So I'm not going to sit here and I can't have a conversation with someone who doesn't believe someone's sexual orientation shouldn't grant them the same, you know, opportunities and the same rights that, you know, other people have. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So your age group, do you feel as though in your discussions, and I mean, I'm pretty sure you're online and you're looking at these things, are they galvanized to vote this November in 49 days?
So yes, but I would say from the people I talk to and the people who I have on Twitter and everything.
The people that you talk to, what would you consider yourself? Are you a left? Are you a progressive?
Yes.
So are you having these discussions with more progressives?
I'm with everyone on the spectrum. I have a lot in class, but usually it's just like between my friends, and I'm not sure exactly how they identify. They aren't even really politically active. They just, you know, the pandemic and everything really opened their eyes to a lot of political problems. So they just started getting interested in politics, and, you know, it was really only something that I would talk about because they would ask me the questions because I was the political science guy, and, you know,
you was the hotep in the room.
So basically anytime they had a question on something that was happening, you know, they would come to me. So specifically, you know, when everyone lost their job and around March and everything, and then, you know, the school had ended and a lot of people had lost their jobs. College students, like my friends, they lost their jobs, but they also didn't, like, they wanted to know if they were going to be able to get the that stimulus check that they were sending out, that $1,200 that they sent out 6 months ago.
Right.
They so they came to me about that. So it was like around that time that within my friend group we really started talking about it. But I'm not really sure where they identify on the spectrum, or if they even really know what the spectrum is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you say who's galvanized in this election? Are young people? Is the young vote going to turn out?
I want to say yes, but I really feel as though this is going to be the most hectic election probably in the history of the country, like definitely going forward as well, because there's so many different factors that you can look at. Like again, no one votes for a singular reason. So yeah, Donald Trump is the overall.
Some people do vote for a singular reason.
Yes, they do.
And that's the problem.
But, okay,
go
yeah,
ahead.
okay, yeah. So Donald Trump is he's the, I guess, the number one issue this election is Donald Trump, his job performance. People either they think he did a good job, or they just think he's been the worst president ever, and that's one issue. Another is the coronavirus issue, and those are the two most pressing issues. But at the same time, voting against those would be voting for Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, not even only his record, like on his the policies that he's enacted or that he supported, but in his rhetoric in the campaign and the way that he's campaigned, he's not making it easy for, specifically me. He's not making it easy for me to vote for him.
As a black progressive.
Yes. And let me say this some people, you shouldn't separate what they do from who they are. Politicians, because what they do affects too many people's lives, you shouldn't separate what they do from who they are. But Joe Biden really is a really good person. Like from just a standpoint of who he is, his story and everything, he's amazing. And
he's a decent man.
Yeah, and
he's Uncle Joe.
Yeah, and yes. from that standpoint, I'm very happy for him. Like, and I was telling my friend this, like, I met Joe Biden on a few occasions. I met him at the train station by accident. I met him at the basketball game. And like, he's always come off as a sincere person. But hearing him say that, Latinos are diverse because, black people are only basically one voting group, and to say to Charlamagne the God that if you don't vote for him, you're not black. And to say things like this, along with the fact that, you're adopting some progressive policies, but you're adopting the most, menial ones. And it's like, he wants to lower the age for Medicare from 65 to 60. And yeah, that's a big gap, but Hillary Clinton wanted to lower it to 55. So we're saying progressive, okay, but how progressive are you? And then he wants to raise the minimum wage to 15, but minimum wages have been increased, not overall, but in certain places it's been increasing anyway. So like, he's adopting things that aren't very progressive, really.
From what I know about Joe Biden and studying him over the years, he is a pragmatist. He moves where the party moves. So I would say, to counteract that discussion, if the progressive side of the party, he can be moved. If the progressive side has people and can be moved, and I say the same thing about Kamala Harris. She is progressive and pragmatic, but she goes where the votes go. So I would say to anybody that you can actually get your agendas moved by, nothing's going to get moved with Trump.
Yeah, so I will be voting for Joe Biden, and my friends who they say this, basically the same things that I said, how because they know about some of his record and all that too, but they understand that Trump is a big threat. And people say he's a threat to democracy. He really is, in the sense of, when you look at what he's doing with the courts and just the way that he's guiding civil discourse and the way that he's giving light and that he's giving pretty much the green light to counter violence with violence, or to the member of the Trump supporter that got killed in Portland a few weeks ago by the so-called member of the Antifa member.
Yes.
And then he said he at a rally, I think it was in Henderson, Las Vegas the other day, he had came out and basically said, that's what's supposed to happen. Like, good, like they were supposed to get him. Like, good job. And egging this kind of stuff on. And seeing things like that, and he's pretty much been saying that the election's been rigged since 2015, to give light, so that if he did lose, it would be because that it was set up against him. But I just don't see, if Donald Trump were to win this election, America as we know it would definitely be so much different than what we have seen and what we even imagine it could be. But I agree, under Joe Biden, more things can be done from the progressive standpoint, but you have to I don't want to feel bad about voting for Joe Biden, but
Okay.
Joe Biden is making me feel bad about having to vote for him, and I'm saying that specifically, not even as a progressive, but just as a black person,
Okay.
and a lot of things that he said, but I don't even feel right saying all that stuff about Joe Biden, but then saying I have to vote for him. I actually think it's sad that those are our options, to say that we have to vote for someone that we don't eat, that
The
we
lesser
know.
of two evils.
Yeah, and I think this has to be the last lesser of two evils election, because we can't increase turnout if it's always between two people that are evil. You have to have somebody that people are actually can gravitate towards, who actually has energy behind them, actual energy.
Okay, I understand that, but I will say, as the problem is, when with these long-term politicians, they often have something on their record that's blemished, and that's what it's going to happen over 50 or 30 years. Now, I want to get to, how do you feel about? I believe I've already been on record that I'm an ageist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe anybody's. My issue with Joe Biden was my issue with Bernie Sanders. My issue with anybody. I don't think anybody in their 70s should be actually running the country anymore. Personally, I want to know from a person, you're 20, 21 years. How do you feel about these older, and I'm not going to even just say older white people, especially with the brown end of the country, because I believe one of the things that's positive. This Democratic ticket, I believe, is the formula moving forward. Whereas though there is going to have to be a person of color on at least on the Democratic side moving forward. Period. It's going because that's just where the brown end of the country, and that's just where the party's going. How do you feel?
I would say two things. First, to your second point, I don't think that we need a ticket that's I don't think we need a ticket that needs to be, like a black person on it. Like, yeah, having a black person or person of color or a woman on the ticket would be amazing, but we need people who are actually going to propose policies that are actually going to do things for people that look like us, that we want to see run. Like Andrew Yang was the person who I felt like I would prosper the most under. Not Cory Booker, not Kamala Harris.
But he's Asian.
And he's he's Asian. But that's not like Bernie Sanders had a good platform too, but the problem with him was he was just old. Now, what I think is that we need representatives that are actually representative of us. You look back at pictures of previous bodies of Congress, and they're all old white men. And at no point in this country was everybody an old white man. So, and you look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the youngest member of Congress, and she just turned 30.
Yes.
So, it's not like we need more people that are actually young people who actually know what is going on, especially now because they had a tech hearing a few months ago. Where they had Amazon, Twitter, they had basically the big tech,
and Facebook.
Facebook. Tim Cook was there too from Apple. Yeah, and they were asking.
We getting in the weeds here, guys.
And they weren't. Yeah, and they weren't asking questions like antitrust questions that they should have been asking. They weren't asking, like on Amazon's it's going to end up being one of the biggest monopolies that there are. And they weren't asking those questions. They were asking, do you know what I search into Google? Like, why can't I access my email? Why don't I get this email and stuff like that? And people, especially as technology increases and gets more advanced, we need people who actually understand what's going on. Maybe not, they don't have to be experts on it, but we can't have people who don't know how to work an email supposed to be the people who are in charge of our lives. I don't think that's something.
So are you for congressional term limits?
I would, yes. Well, I'm for congressional term limits from the sense of, if I look at America's a business, like a lot of people, think in business terms. So voters are like the, I guess you say the executive board of a business. And if we put a CEO in charge, and the CEO can be the president, can be your representative, your mayor, your governor, somebody, and they don't make your country money, and they don't give your company money, or they don't make progress in your country, actually do good things for the country, then they shouldn't be in that position. And and you got to vote them out. So yeah, I don't think that people should be able to be in Congress for 50 years and not actually have anything substantial to come out of it. I don't think that people should be able to make all this government money, get this government health care, but not support other people having health care, not support things that would actually advance other people's lives.
Okay. You didn't go about my original question though, how do you believe you support cutting the age off
Oh,
at president?
um,
You have to be 35.
I would say,
But
if there's an age limit,
Is it-
if there's like, if you have to be a
it's a
certain,
floor,
yes, yeah,
35.
if there's a floor, there has to be a ceiling. And like my dad says, if you don't trust them to drive a car, or if they can't find a remote at 80, then they probably shouldn't be in charge of the country. And I absolutely think that's true. I don't think that somebody who okay,
Pop need to go lay down.
yeah, and it's not even like, because Joe Biden, like, sometimes he can seem incoherent, but then other times he runs around or whatever like that, and he tries to make
he's in
himself
great shape.
yeah, and like
He's in great
and
shape.
So I'm not saying that like, because you're old that means that you have like dementia or like you're slow or anything like that, but just I don't want to have to worry about if you're gonna have a heart attack tomorrow. I don't want to have to worry about if natural causes is going to get you. I'm not saying that they need to be the most in shape or most in health, but there's certain things that with old age it comes along, and I just don't think that we should be putting our trust and putting this much power in somebody that's older in age.
And they can be also generationally, they be set in their ways, because he's from that generation of calling women sugar and honey.
He says,
and hugging people,
and the way he taught you, like, he says things like, his phrases are really old. You can tell when he says like no malarkey and things like such as things like that. Which that's not really that big a problem, but yeah,
you can't. It's of his generation, but it's whereas though you lose touch.
Yeah.
One more big thing. Where do you see your age group with all that's going on with this social justice and things that are going on in the street? I want to know, especially you go to a diverse school, you have the diverse friends, this, that, and other. I'm to the belief that your generation is going to be the generation to pull us out of this, because in a sense, whereas though racism is all and prejudice is always going to be there, but I just see with the brown and other country that, and you guys at your generation are more open to being diverse and with dating and friend groups and things like that. How do you're on the ground, you live this life, at least in your view, what do you see about these relations when it comes to race?
I agree, and I wouldn't even say just race. I think on a lot of issues.
Sexual orientation.
I know conservatives who also think that climate change is a very big problem. But the mainstream Republican, talking point is that climate change isn't real and all that kind of stuff. And
we're talking about the over 45.
Yeah. So I think that my generation, even if we differ on certain issues, I think collectively we have somewhat the same view that everyone deserves the same rights regardless, and that's regardless of whether you want to say race, sexual orientation, age, all that stuff. Like, we're just very open and welcoming of everybody, and we believe that everyone needs to be included. Now, I do think that we're going to be the ones to pull us out of this, and I say that all the time. I say we're going to be the ones. I just feel it in my lifetime. Income inequality, I feel like that's gonna go away. I think homelessness, I feel like we're gonna be the ones to crack down on homelessness. I think we'll be the ones to and they say there's institutional racism, systemic racism. Yes. I think we'll be the ones to turn that around, to actually change the institutions. The institutions haven't really changed much since they were conceptualized and since they were actually formed.
For 200 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, obviously there's been new institutions and stuff, but
the system's not broken. It's working exactly the way it's supposed to.
For who it needs to work for.
Yes.
And I think that we're going to be the ones to change that. And I think that's Democrat and conservatives, Republicans. And yeah, we'll still have the differences of fiscal policies and maybe foreign affairs and everything. But I think on social issues specifically. And I feel like we don't give into the BS from the media, because corporate, it's almost all media, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, is corporate media. So we're getting corporate talking points. And if you watch CNN, they're covering the all the riots and the protests. They're covering it. They're trying to spin a positive light on that. And you should be able to separate the peaceful protests from the riots. Like the riots are inexcusable. The looting is inexcusable. But at the same time, we have to recognize that that's different from the protest. And if you're watching Fox News, you're not seeing the peaceful protests. You're just seeing the looting and everything. And I think we understand that everything's not just one-sided. We understand that you can be,
your age group.
Yes, yeah, we understand that, we can say Black Lives Matter and believe that there's racism in this country, but also, support the cops and support good law enforcement. Actually want them to, maybe have more funding for training or something like that. But we can be both of those things. But if you're paying attention to Donald Trump, if you're paying attention to the Fox News, the CNNs of the world, then
Tom Cotton.
Yeah, then maybe, especially that one, then maybe you think that it's only a one-sided thing and it's like a right and wrong, but it's never a right and wrong. Everyone always has good points.
I usually do on my show a soapbox episode, whereas though I give my opinion and I regurgitate my feeling on the subject that we discussed. I'm going to give you the opportunity to have my soapbox today, because I know you wrote an op-ed several months ago. And go into that and tell a little bit about the op-ed, and then deliver it to the audience.
Yeah. So during the quarantine, I guess you can call it the summertime if you want to call it that. I was just watching the news, looking through social media, and it seemed as though one of two issues was very prevalent. Obviously, the coronavirus, but after the murder of George Floyd, it seemed as though something had just switched, and it seems like that was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of now you see everybody on the streets, not just black people. It's white people. It's everybody of every race. And
that's when the SJWs came out.
Yeah,
the social justice warriors.
Yeah.
The woke crew.
Yeah, and
they was sleep.
Yeah,
I contend black people ain't never been sleep. Y'all just woke up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Exactly. No, yeah. So I just I wanted to write a piece, and I wanted to submit it either to my local paper, which is the Smyrna Clean Sun-Times. Again, with thus being 72% white, I thought that's something that people who maybe didn't have the experiences of a black person, or maybe didn't understand what was really going on, I wanted to write something for them. But also, I ended up publishing this in my school newspaper because I wanted. There were a lot of talks about reparations or social justice, or is there institutional racism and all that. So I wanted to write something that that talked about all of that.
Okay, and you have the floor.
All right.
You can get on your soapbox and deliver it.
While the nation remained paused and indoors due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the horrendous murder of George Floyd by several Minneapolis police officers opened the eyes of many in white America to the reality that most black people already knew existed. Our nation's institutions are and always have been racist. Now, this is not to say that everyone who works within these institutions are racist. Rather, the practices, priorities, and actions of these institutions are deeply embedded in our country's shameful history of discrimination against black people. A shameful history starting in 1619 that saw about 600,000 Africans stolen from their homes to labor for free in the New World for 263 years. Slavery was quote-unquote abolished with the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, following the passage of the Coversations Acts and the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, with the last slaves being set free in Texas in 1865. What followed that atrocity was 100 years of belittlement, hate, and racism toward the black community in the form of Jim Crow laws and segregation. The black community saw its voting rights challenged and faced unequal treatment by law enforcement. Black facilities were never in as good a shape as those in white communities, and nonviolent protests were often met by violence from police officers and white Americans. There was a war on drugs that turned out to be a war on black people, and the infamous 1994 crime bill and mandatory minimums led to mass incarceration that disproportionately affected black people as well. Some of the problems faced by the black community immediately following slavery are still prevalent today. The problems Martin Luther King Jr. and recently deceased John Lewis preached about during the March on Washington in 1963 such as black people's right to vote and to be treated equally, are problems Lewis talked about while walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama in 2020. The mistreatment of the black community and overuse of force by police rapped about by NWA and Tupac in the 90s continues today, and with central themes of Kendrick Lamar's critically acclaimed album To Pimp a Butterfly, released in 2015. Now, why is that? It's because America has never truly admitted guilt, nor has the country reconciled with the shameful treatment of the black community. Our country never adequately apologized for slavery or gave what is owed to the black community. Our country never adequately for building the economy that positioned the colonies and eventually the United States to become the economic superpower that it is today. How did the United States expect the black community to become a prosperous group capable of making it in America if America never adjusted the institutions or practices of government that existed when people with black skins were deemed to only be 3/5 of a person? How does the United States expect the black community to quote unquote pull themselves up by the bootstraps when so many within it are theoretically walking around barefoot? Here's a great analogy I heard. 3 people are playing the game Monopoly for hundreds of rounds. However, the makers of the game made it so that one player couldn't earn any money, buy any property, or own any businesses. The other 2 players were able to accumulate a ton of money, buy a bunch of property, and own just about everything on the board. Now, all 3 players are following the rules of the game, but the game makers tilted the scales against the 3rd player to make it impossible for them to ever win. And that's the history of black America. Even though black Americans abide by the same laws and now somewhat have the same opportunities that white Americans do, the white community had a 263-year head start, and nothing has ever been done to level the playing field or shorten that gap. Black people to this day do not own nearly as much property or as many businesses as those in the white community because of the trickle-down effect of preventing our ancestors from being able to obtain money, educate themselves, or live comfortably for 263 years. When will America make the black community whole? How can America make up for its past wrongdoings and current shortcomings? America can learn how to reconcile and come to grips with its past by examining the actions of Germany following the country's own heinous crimes and policies during the 40s. With the end of World War II and the fall of the Third Reich, Germany was in physical and economic ruin. In order to revive its economy, Germany would need to become an ally to the very powers they have fought against, a feat that can only be possible if they admitted guilt or addressed their crimes against the Jewish people during the Holocaust. Vergangenheitsbewältigung, meaning overcoming the past, was the name of the process Germany coined to come to terms with what they had done under the rule of Hitler and National Socialism. This process included the Nuremberg trials, where Nazi officials were tried for crimes against humanity by the International Tribunal. And in order to atone for exploiting the Jewish community for free labor, Germany agreed to allocate reparation payments to Israel, which had integrated Holocaust survivors. And Germany also provided payments to individuals who were forced into labor and servitude, or their living descendants. And to this day, Germany has provided over 66 billion euros, which is about $76 billion, in goods to Israel and payments to the aforementioned individuals. Not only that, America could also look at its own past, and following the World War II, where it was the executive order 9066 signed by Franklin Roosevelt, where he made it legal to put Japanese individuals in internment camps. And then Ronald Reagan came around with the civil something, I forget, it was an act in 1988, and basically what that had did, that was the apology for those internment camps, and then that had gave $20,000 to any living individual who was put into those internment camps. Now, while no one alive today is personally to be blamed or held accountable for the actions of their ancestors actions have long-lasting effects that continue to hurt the black community today. We as a country have an obligation to accept our past and discuss how to move forward. 401 years have gone by since Africans were stolen from their homes, sent to this land, and sold. From the moment they got here to now, America has shown a blatant disregard for the lives and well-being of people with black skin. Many believe America to be the greatest country on earth, and I can't disagree. America is great, but not for what it is or what it was, but because it was always open to change and to become a better version of itself. It's time for our country to engage in self-reflection and come to terms with the fact that our institutions and their functions need to be re-examined and modified because they have done and continue to do little to nothing to uplift the black community. That would only be the first step. What would have to follow would be a form of reparations to the black community, but not reparations in the form of a check from the government to the descendants of slaves. Instead, reparations through investing and allocating resources directly into black communities. Weird timing. Such as education, social programs, community restoration projects, business loans or grants, and job programs. If this were to happen, America would make the future for its black community much more promising than its past. A future that the black community not only deserves, but is owed. That's it.
Excellent. Excellent. Whoa. With that being said, that was the soapbox for the day. And I can't add any more to that. So I want to thank you. I think this was very interesting, a great conversation. And I am ecstatic because this young man is what we would want the next generation to be. And even more ecstatic the fact that he is my second born son. So Dallas Hill, and I often said on this show several times that my children are smarter than me. And the only thing I'm worried about is he's going to take my show from me now. But hopefully he'll just go back to school and just work on that. And look for him in the coming future because you want to actually come back and actually run for public office in Delaware. So on a progressive platform.
Yes.
To change the world. So that's some food for thought, that's for sure. Thank y'all, and I hope you enjoyed this. Like, share, leave any specific comments, and I will actually please share this with your children and try to have these conversations about where are they at. Talk to these millennials. You can actually learn some things from them. But until next time, thanks for listening in, checking in with us, and class dismissed.
And go vote.
Yeah.